My name is Derek, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about trust, revenge, and the lengths a man will go to when his world crumbles beneath his feet. It all started on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening in October, in our modest two-story house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I was fixing a leaky faucet in our kitchen. Seems like I was always fixing something in that old house, when my wife Shannon walked in with her phone clutched to her chest like it contained nuclear launch codes. "Derek, you'll never guess who just messaged me on Facebook," she said, her voice carrying an excitement I hadn't heard in months. I looked up from under the sink, wrench still in hand. Shannon was 34, still beautiful despite the stress lines that had appeared around her eyes over the past few years. We'd been married for 12 years, and I thought I knew every expression that could cross her face. But this one was different. "Who's that?" I asked, wiping my greasy hands on an old towel. "Terrence Jackson. Remember I told you about him? We dated all through senior year of high school." The name hit me like a cold slap. Of course I remembered Terrence Jackson. Shannon had mentioned him exactly 3 times in our 12 years of marriage, and each time with a wistful look in her eyes that made my stomach churn. The high school quarterback. The one who got away. The one who went to Duke on a football scholarship while she stayed home and eventually settled for a small-town mechanic like me. What does he want? I tried to keep my voice casual, but something in my chest was already tightening. He's moving back to Iowa. Got some big executive job in Des Moines. He wants to reconnect with old friends before the 20-year reunion next spring. 20-year reunion. Shannon's class of 2004. She'd been talking about it for months, alternating between excitement and anxiety about seeing everyone again. "That's nice," I managed, though the word tasted like sawdust in my mouth. Shannon scrolled through her phone, her face glowing in the blue light. "Look at him, Derek. Can you believe this is the same skinny kid from high school?" She turned the screen toward me and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Terrence Jackson had indeed filled out. He was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confident smile that comes from never having to worry about money. His profile picture showed him standing next to a silver Mercedes, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in 2 months at Morrison's auto shop. "Impressive," I said, handing her phone back. "He says he's driving through Cedar Falls this weekend and wants to grab coffee. Isn't that crazy? After all these years." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Shannon slept beside me. She'd been checking her phone constantly all evening, smiling at messages she didn't share. When I asked what was so interesting, she just said, "Oh, nothing important," and tucked the phone under her pillow. I tried to push down the paranoid thoughts creeping through my mind. Shannon wasn't that type of woman. We had 2 kids, 10-year-old Kyle and 8-year-old Chloe. We had a life together, a mortgage, shared dreams of maybe taking a family vacation to Yellowstone next summer. She wouldn't throw all that away for some high school fantasy, would she? But as I listened to her breathing in the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Saturday came and Shannon spent 3 hours getting ready for coffee with an old friend. She tried on 4 different outfits, finally settling on a blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'll probably be back by 3, she said, kissing my cheek. The kiss felt perfunctory, like she was already somewhere else in her mind. "Have fun," I said, watching her drive away in our aging Toyota Camry. She didn't come back by 3. Or 4. Or 5. When she finally walked through the door at 6:47 p.m., I'd been watching the clock. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were brighter than they'd been in months. "Sorry I'm late. We just lost track of time. You know how it is, catching up with old friends." "How was it?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Oh, you know. Same old stories. Remember when this, remember when that." But she couldn't stop smiling as she said it. That night she was different. More attentive to the kids, humming while she made dinner, actually laughing at my stupid jokes for the first time in weeks. It should have made me happy. Instead, it made me sick. The coffee dates became a regular thing. Every few days, Shannon would announce she was meeting the old gang, or some high school friends. Always vague, always casual, always with that same glowing smile. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Shannon was just happy to reconnect with people from her past. There was nothing wrong with that. But then I started noticing other things. She bought new perfume. Something expensive that made her smell like exotic flowers instead of the vanilla body spray she'd been using for years. She started going to the gym again, something she hadn't done since Chloe was born. Her phone, which used to lie forgotten on kitchen counters and coffee tables, was now permanently attached to her hand. 3 weeks after that first coffee date, I came home early from work. Morrison had sent me out to look at a customer's car that wouldn't start, but it turned out to be just a dead battery, a 5-minute fix. I walked into our house at 2:30 in the afternoon and stopped dead in my tracks. There was a man's jacket on our couch. An expensive-looking charcoal gray blazer that definitely didn't belong to me. I could hear voices from the kitchen. Shannon's laugh, bright and musical, and a deeper voice I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding as I crept toward the kitchen doorway. Shannon was sitting at our kitchen table across from a tall black man in a crisp white shirt. Terrence Jackson in the flesh. He was even more impressive in person. Broad shoulders, perfect teeth, the kind of presence that filled a room. Derek. Shannon jumped up when she saw me, her face flushing. "You're home early." "Car trouble turned out to be simpler than expected," I said, forcing a smile. "You must be Terrence." He stood and extended a hand. His grip was firm, confident, the handshake of a man accustomed to making deals and closing sales. "Great to finally meet you, Derek. Shannon's told me so much about you." "Funny she's barely mentioned you," I lied smoothly. An awkward silence settled over the kitchen. Terrence glanced at Shannon, who was fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed increasing lately. "Well, I should probably get going," Terrence said. "Shannon, thanks for the coffee. And Derek, nice meeting you." After he left, Shannon busied herself cleaning up the coffee cups, avoiding eye contact. "So," I said carefully, "you're having him over to the house now?" He was in the neighborhood. It seemed rude not to invite him in. "In the neighborhood? We live on a dead-end street, Shannon. Nobody's ever just in the neighborhood." She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or defiance. But then she forced a smile. "Derek, you're being ridiculous. He's just an old friend." But I wasn't being ridiculous, and we both knew it. That night, after Shannon had gone to bed, I did something I'd never done before in 12 years of marriage. I went through her purse. Her main phone was there, but my fingers found something else at the bottom of her bag. A second phone. Small, cheap, the kind you could buy with cash at any convenience store. My hands were shaking as I powered it on. There was only one contact saved, T. The message history made my blood run cold. "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're all I've ever wanted, Shannon. Always have been. I know this is complicated, but we deserve to be happy. When can we tell Derek?" "Tell Derek what?" I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one like a knife in my chest. Plans to meet. Declarations of feelings that had apparently never died. References to a future together that didn't include me. And then I found the photos. Pictures of them together in hotel rooms. Intimate selfies. Images that left no doubt about what had been happening during those coffee dates and girls' nights out. I sat in our dark kitchen, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, that had been cracking for weeks. Something deeper. Something fundamental about who I thought I was and what I thought my life meant. I could have confronted her right then. Could have stormed upstairs and thrown the phone in her face, demanded explanations, fought for our marriage. That's what the old Derek would have done. But the old Derek was gone. In his place sat a man who was discovering he was capable of something much more calculated. I took photos of every message, every picture. I memorized Terrence's phone number. I noted the patterns. They usually met on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, always at the Marriott downtown. And then I carefully put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. I smiled and made jokes at dinner. I helped the kids with homework. I kissed Shannon goodbye when she left for her appointments, and welcomed her home with questions about her day. I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. But underneath I was planning. Shannon's high school was organizing their 20-year reunion for the first Saturday in December. She'd been on the planning committee, calling classmates and helping arrange catering. She was excited about it, kept talking about how fun it would be to see everyone again. "You know what would be amazing?" I said one evening as casually as I could manage. "If someone put together a slideshow or video montage for the reunion. You know, old photos, memories, that kind of thing." Shannon looked up from her laptop where she'd been doing work, though I was pretty sure she was actually texting Terrence. "That's actually a really sweet idea," she said. "But who would have time to put something like that together?" "I could do it," I offered. "I've got plenty of free time, and I'm pretty good with that video editing software Kyle uses for his school projects." Shannon's face lit up. "Derek, that would be incredible. Everyone would love that. Consider it my gift to your graduating class." What I didn't tell her was that my video would include some very special bonus content. I spent the next 3 weeks collecting materials. Shannon had boxes of high school memorabilia in our basement, yearbooks, photos, old letters and notes. She was happy to let me dig through everything, thrilled that I was taking such an interest in her past. But my real work happened after midnight, when the house was quiet and Shannon was asleep. That's when I'd carefully extract her burner phone and document her ongoing affair. Screenshots of conversations. Photos of their meetings. Audio recordings of voicemails where she told Terrence she loved him and couldn't wait to start their new life together. The most damning recording came 3 days before the reunion. Shannon thought I was asleep when she took the call, but I'd been lying there with my eyes closed, listening. "I can't do this much longer, Terrence," she whispered into the phone. "Derek is such a good man, and I feel terrible lying to him every day." "Baby, we talked about this," came Terrence's voice through the speaker. "After the reunion we'll tell him everything. We'll be honest about what we want. What if he fights for custody? What if he tries to take the kids?" "He won't. Derek's not that type. He'll do what's best for Kyle and Chloe even if it hurts him." They were so confident in their assessment of my character. So sure that good old Derek would just roll over and accept being discarded for a better model. They had no idea what good old Derek was really capable of. The night before the reunion I finished my video masterpiece. It started innocent enough: graduation photos, prom pictures, shots of teenage Shannon and her classmates looking impossibly young. I'd set it to a soundtrack of popular songs from 2004, and for the first 10 minutes, it was exactly what everyone would expect. But then the music changed. Became more ominous. "And now," my voice said over the speakers, "let's look at how some high school relationships have been rekindled after 20 years. That's when the screenshots would start appearing. Messages between Shannon and Terrence, complete with timestamps and phone numbers. Photos of them together in compromising positions. Audio clips of Shannon declaring her love for another man while lying to her husband. I'd saved the most devastating revelation for last. A recent message where Shannon had written, "Derek doesn't know it yet, but his marriage is already over. I'm just waiting for the right time to tell him." The reunion was being held in the high school gymnasium, decorated with silver and blue streamers and balloons. About 200 people had shown up, a pretty good turnout for a class that graduated with 180 students. Shannon had spent the entire day getting ready. Hair appointment, manicure, a new dress that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. She looked stunning, and it broke my heart a little to know she'd done it all for him. "You clean up pretty nice yourself," she said, straightening my tie. I'd worn my only good suit, the same one I'd married her in 12 years ago. "Thanks. You look incredible." And she did. Even knowing what I knew, even planning what I was planning, I couldn't deny that Shannon was beautiful. For a moment I almost lost my resolve. Almost decided to delete the video and try to work things out. Then I remembered her voice on that phone call. "Derek's not that type. He'll do what's best for Kyle and Chloe even if it hurts him." We arrived at 7 p.m. sharp. The gym had been transformed with dim lighting and round tables covered in silver tablecloths. A DJ was playing music from the early 2000s, and people were already mingling, drinks in hand, everyone trying to prove how successful and happy they'd become. Shannon immediately found her old clique, women who'd kept in touch over the years through Facebook and occasional get-togethers. I hung back, making small talk with their husbands, playing the role of the supportive spouse. Terrence arrived at 7:30, and the change in Shannon was immediate. Her laugh became more musical, her gestures more animated. She kept glancing in his direction, and when their eyes met across the room, the electricity was palpable. "Derek." Terrence approached our table, immaculate in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Good to see you again, man." "Terrence," I replied, standing to shake his hand. "You look like success agrees with you." "Can't complain. The corporate world's been good to me." Shannon appeared at my elbow, practically glowing. Terrence was just telling me about his new position with Meridian Financial. Vice President of Strategic Development. "Impressive," I said. "That must keep you pretty busy." "It does, but I always make time for the important things." His eyes locked on Shannon as he said it, and she blushed like a schoolgirl. Dinner was served at 8, chicken cordon bleu that tasted like cardboard, but nobody seemed to care. The wine was flowing, old stories were being shared, and the general mood was festive and nostalgic. At 8:45, the class president, a woman named Miranda who'd somehow maintained her high school peppiness well into her 30s, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special treat tonight. Derek Morrison, husband of our very own Shannon Wells Morrison, has put together a beautiful video tribute to our graduating class. Derek, come on up here. The spotlight found me and I felt 200 pairs of eyes turn in my direction. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding but my hands steady. Thank you, Miranda. I just wanted to create something special for Shannon's class. A way to remember where you all came from and celebrate how far you've traveled. I nodded to the AV technician, a pimply kid who'd been hired for the evening. The lights dimmed and my video began playing on the large screen behind me. For the first 10 minutes, everything went exactly as planned. Laughter filled the room as people saw their younger selves frozen in time. There were us at prom photos and cheers when the football team appeared on screen. Shannon was beaming, occasionally squeezing my hand and whispering, "This is perfect," in my ear. Then the music changed. The upbeat pop songs faded out, replaced by something darker and more ominous. The images on screen shifted from innocent high school memories to something else entirely. And now, my recorded voice echoed through the gymnasium, let's examine how some bonds from high school have recently been rekindled. The first screenshot appeared on the 20-foot screen, Shannon's phone showing a text conversation with T. Shannon, I can't stop thinking about yesterday. Being with you felt like coming home. T, you were always meant to be mine, baby. High school was just a detour. The gymnasium fell silent except for the sound of my voice continuing the narration. Some people believe that true love waits. That destiny will find a way. Let's see how destiny has been working in the lives of Shannon Wells Morrison and Terrence Jackson. More screenshots appeared. Messages about meeting at hotels. Plans to leave spouses. Intimate photos that left nothing to the imagination. I heard Shannon gasp beside me. Derek, what is this? Stop it right now. But I didn't stop it. Neither did the teenage AV technician who seemed frozen in shock. The audio clips began playing. Shannon's voice crystal clear through the sound system. Terrence, I've never stopped loving you. Derek is a good man but he's not you. He's never been you. I can't wait to start our real life together. This marriage was just a mistake I need to correct. The room erupted. People were shouting, chairs scraping against the floor, someone screaming for someone to turn that off. Shannon grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Derek, please, you have to stop this. But the final revelation was yet to come. The screen filled with a recent photo, Shannon and Terrence in a hotel room, her engagement ring clearly visible on the nightstand beside them. My voice continued over the chaos. This photo was taken last Tuesday afternoon, while Shannon told her husband she was visiting her sick grandmother in Waterloo. That's when Shannon broke. She let out a sound that was part sob, part scream and ran from the gymnasium. Several women followed her, but most of the room remained transfixed by the ongoing disaster on screen. Terrence tried to approach the AV booth, but he was blocked by a group of men from the football team. I recognized Connor Walsh, who'd been the defensive tackle, now probably 50 pounds heavier but still intimidating. Where you going, hotshot? Connor growled. Suddenly not so comfortable with everyone knowing your business? This is insane, Terrence protested. This is private information. Was private, corrected another man I didn't recognize. Now it's very fucking public. The video had ended, but the aftermath was just beginning. People were clustering in groups, phones out, undoubtedly already posting about this on social media. The class president was trying to restore order, but it was hopeless. I walked to the microphone one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting your evening. I just felt that truth deserved to be heard. Shannon and Terrence are both adults who made their choices. Now everyone gets to see what those choices were. I left the microphone and walked calmly out of the gymnasium. In the parking lot, I could see Shannon sitting in our car, sobbing. Several of her friends surrounded the vehicle, trying to comfort her through the windows. Connor Walsh caught up with me as I reached the edge of the parking lot. Derek, man, that was... He struggled for words. I mean, it was brutal, but fuck, she had it coming. She made her choice, I said simply. I just made mine. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to a motel on the other side of town and checked in under my own name. I wanted Shannon to have time to process what had happened, to make whatever calls she needed to make, to figure out what she was going to do next. I also wanted to avoid the confrontation I knew was coming. I wasn't ready to see her tears, to hear her explanations or apologies. I wasn't ready to discuss custody arrangements or asset division or any of the practical matters that would need to be addressed. For one night, I just wanted to sit in a generic motel room and feel nothing. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from people at the reunion, missed calls from Shannon, voicemails I didn't listen to. I turned it off and watched reruns of old sitcoms until I fell asleep. When I finally went home the next morning, Shannon was waiting at the kitchen table. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes swollen and red, still wearing the dress from the night before. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. "I'm listening." "How long have you known?" "About a month. I found your second phone." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Derek, I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For weeks, Shannon. This wasn't some moment of weakness or a mistake you made once. You've been planning to leave me for another man while lying to my face every single day." "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. "After the reunion we were going to sit down and talk about everything." "Were you? Or were you just going to keep lying until it became convenient to leave?" She finally looked up at me and I saw something I'd never seen in Shannon's eyes before. Genuine fear. "What happens now?" she asked. Now you pack your things and figure out where you're going to stay. I'll have my lawyer contact yours this week." "What about Kyle and Chloe?" "What about them? They're going to learn that sometimes parents make terrible decisions that hurt everyone they're supposed to protect." Shannon started crying again. "Derek, please. I know I screwed up, but we have 12 years together. We have children. We can work through this." "Can we, Shannon? Can we work through the fact that you told another man you'd never stopped loving him? Can we work through you planning your new life with him while pretending to be happy in our marriage?" I pulled out my phone and played one of her recorded messages. "Derek doesn't know it yet, but his marriage is already over. I'm just waiting for the right time to tell him. Did you think I'd never find out? Did you think you could just transition from one life to another without consequences?" She had no answer for that. The divorce proceedings were ugly as I'd expected them to be. Shannon hired an expensive attorney, paid for by Terrence, I suspected, who tried to paint me as vindictive and cruel. They argued that my public humiliation of Shannon should be considered in custody decisions. But the evidence was overwhelming. Shannon had committed adultery, lied extensively, and planned to abandon our marriage for another relationship. Her own recorded words made it clear that she'd already mentally checked out of our family. My lawyer, a tough older woman named Patricia Collins, was merciless in depositions. "Mrs. Morrison," she said during Shannon's questioning, "you testified that you love your children and want what's best for them. How do you reconcile that with secretly planning to uproot their lives without their father's knowledge?" I wasn't thinking clearly." "Were you thinking clearly when you told Mr. Jackson, and I quote, 'Derek won't fight us for custody because he's too nice'? Were you thinking clearly when you suggested that your husband would simply accept being discarded?" Shannon's lawyer objected constantly, but the damage was done. The recordings and text messages painted a picture of someone who'd been coldly calculating while presenting herself as a devoted wife and mother. The most devastating moment came when Patricia played the recording of Shannon talking about how Derek was a good man but not you. "He's never been you. Mrs. Morrison, if your husband was such a good man, why were you so eager to leave him for someone else?" It wasn't about Derek not being good enough. It was about feeling like I'd settled. Settled? You settled for the man who worked 2 jobs to support you through nursing school? Who stayed up all night when your children were sick? Who loved you enough to create a video tribute for your high school reunion, not knowing it would expose your betrayal? Shannon broke down on the witness stand, but it wasn't sympathy she garnered. It was the realization that she'd thrown away something precious for a fantasy that had already dissolved. Because Terrence had indeed vanished from her life immediately after the reunion disaster. It turned out that not only did he have a wife in Chicago that Shannon had never known about, but his company was also investigating him for embezzling funds. The last Shannon had heard, he'd moved to Phoenix and changed his phone number. The irony was thick. She'd destroyed her marriage for a man who'd abandoned her the moment their affair became inconvenient. I was awarded primary custody of Kyle and Chloe, with Shannon getting every other weekend and one evening per week. The house remained mine, since I'd been making the mortgage payments and had never wavered in my commitment to our family. Shannon moved in with her sister in Des Moines, taking a job at a medical clinic for significantly less money than she'd been making at our local hospital. Her new reality was a small apartment, a long commute to see her children, and the knowledge that everyone in our small town knew exactly what she'd done. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, she called me. "Derek, I need you to know how sorry I am. I know you are, Shannon. But sorry doesn't change anything. I threw away the best thing in my life for a fantasy. Terrence he wasn't the man I remembered, or maybe I wasn't the girl he remembered. Either way, it was all an illusion. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Maybe that you forgive me? That you understand why I did it? I thought about it for a long moment. I do understand, Shannon. You got caught up in a dream of what your life could have been. You convinced yourself that you deserved something more exciting than what we had. And do you forgive me? Someday maybe. For the kids' sake, I hope so. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. And it certainly doesn't mean taking you back. She was quiet for a long time. I miss our life, Derek. I miss being a family. That life is gone, Shannon. You made sure of that. 2 years have passed since that reunion night. Kyle and Chloe have adjusted better than I'd expected, though both of them struggle with understanding why their mother made the choices she did. Kyle, now 12, has started asking harder questions about trust and commitment. Chloe, 10, just wants everyone to be happy again. I've had to become both mother and father to them most of the time, managing school events and soccer games and piano recitals that Shannon can't attend because she lives 2 hours away. It's exhausting, but it's also given me a deeper relationship with my children than I ever had before. People in town treat me with a mixture of sympathy and respect. Some think what I did at the reunion was cruel and vindictive. Others see it as justified, a wronged man who refused to be quietly discarded. I've thought a lot about that night, about whether I would do it differently if I had the chance. The truth is, I don't know. The pain of discovery was so intense, the betrayal so complete, that public exposure felt like the only way to balance the scales. Shannon had been prepared to humiliate me privately, to make me the clueless husband who got left behind while she started her exciting new life. Instead, she became the woman who destroyed her family for a man who didn't want her enough to stay and face the consequences. I haven't dated since the divorce. Part of me isn't ready to trust again. Part of me is too busy with work and kids to even think about romance. And part of me wonders if I'll ever be able to love someone without constantly waiting for them to decide I'm not enough. But I'm not bitter exactly. I'm different, more cautious, less trusting, quicker to see ulterior motives and innocent behavior. The man who would have believed his wife was just meeting old friends for coffee is gone forever. Sometimes I wonder what Shannon tells people when they ask about our divorce. Does she admit to the affair, or does she blame it on growing apart? Does she mention the reunion, or has she convinced herself that I'm the villain in her story? It doesn't really matter. Everyone who was there that night knows the truth. Everyone who wasn't there has probably heard about it through the small-town gossip network that's more efficient than any news service. The class of 2004's 20-year reunion has become legendary in Cedar Falls, not for the celebration it was supposed to be, but for the spectacular destruction of what everyone thought was a solid marriage. Miranda, the class president, sent me a handwritten note about 6 months after the reunion. Derek, I wanted you to know that while that night was devastating for everyone involved, especially Shannon, most of us understand why you did what you did. Marriage is supposed to mean something. When someone breaks those vows, there should be consequences. I'm sorry your family was torn apart, but I'm not sorry that Shannon faced the truth about her choices. I keep that note in my desk drawer, along with the final divorce decree and the custody agreement. Documents that mark the end of one life and the beginning of another. Kyle asked me recently if I was angry at his mother. Not angry, I told him. Disappointed. But anger is something you feel in the moment. What I feel now is more like acceptance. Do you wish she hadn't done it? Of course. I wish we were still a family. I wish you and Chloe didn't have to go back and forth between houses. I wish I didn't have to explain to other people why your mother isn't at your baseball games. But you don't wish you hadn't found out? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. No, buddy. I don't wish I hadn't found out. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's still better than living a lie. He nodded like he understood, though at 12, I doubt he really grasped the complexity of what happened to our family. Chloe's questions are different. She wants to know if mommy still loves us, if we can all live together again someday, if it's her fault that daddy looks sad sometimes. Those conversations are harder because she's too young to understand that some mistakes can't be undone, that some choices have permanent consequences. Mommy made a decision that hurt our family, I tell her. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you and Kyle. It just means that sometimes adults do things that change everything even when they don't mean to. It's not a perfect explanation, but it's the best I can do without destroying whatever relationship she has left with Shannon. Last month, Shannon asked if we could all have dinner together, her, me, and the kids. She said she wanted to show Kyle and Chloe that their parents could be civil, that divorce doesn't have to mean eternal warfare. I agreed, mostly for the children's sake. We met at a neutral restaurant, and for 2 hours, we pretended to be a functional family. Shannon asked about school and sports and friends. I made polite conversation about her new job and apartment. The kids seemed happier than they'd been in months. But when dinner was over and Shannon hugged Kyle and Chloe goodbye, I saw her looking at me with something that might have been hope. Later she texted, "Thank you for tonight. It felt like old times." I didn't respond, because it hadn't felt like old times to me at all. It had felt like playing a role in a play where everyone knows how it's supposed to end, but nobody wants to admit it's just a performance. Shannon is still the mother of my children. We'll have graduations and weddings and grandchildren that will require us to be in the same room, to cooperate, to present a united front when necessary. But we'll never be husband and wife again. We'll never be best friends or confidants or partners in life. That relationship died the moment she chose someone else over our family. The night of that 20-year reunion, I thought I was just exposing Shannon's betrayal. I thought I was getting revenge for being lied to and discarded. But looking back, I realized I was doing something else entirely. I was refusing to be erased. I was insisting that my pain, my love, my 12 years of commitment mattered enough to be acknowledged. Shannon had been prepared to rewrite our history, to turn me into a footnote in her story of finding true love. Instead, I made sure that everyone would know exactly what she'd given up and what it had cost. Was it cruel? Probably. Was it fair? I don't know if fairness even applies to situations like that. Was it necessary? For my own sanity, yes. I needed everyone to see what I'd seen. I needed the truth to exist somewhere other than just in my own broken heart. And if that makes me vindictive or petty or unforgiving, then so be it. I'm the man whose wife threw away 12 years of marriage for a 3-month affair with a high school boyfriend who didn't even stick around to help her pick up the pieces. I'm the man who refused to quietly disappear so she could have her fairy tale ending. I'm the man who made sure that everyone at that reunion understood exactly what kind of person Shannon Wells Morrison really was underneath all that beauty and charm. Some people think that makes me the villain in this story. Others think it makes me a hero. I don't think I'm either one. I'm just a man who discovered that the woman he loved had been living a double life, planning to abandon him for someone she considered an upgrade. And when faced with that reality, I chose to make sure she couldn't control the narrative of our destruction. 3 weeks ago, I ran into Miranda at the grocery store. She was buying ingredients for her own daughter's birthday party, and we ended up talking in the produce section for 20 minutes. "Derek," she said, weighing apples in her hands, "I hope you know that what you did that night, it wasn't just about Shannon. It was about all of us." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there were probably 6 other marriages at that reunion hanging by threads. Husbands and wives who'd been lying to each other, cheating, planning their exits. After what happened with Shannon, a lot of people went home and had very honest conversations." She paused, selecting the best apples and putting them in her cart. "My friend Jennifer? She'd been having an affair with her personal trainer for 8 months. Went home that night and confessed everything to her husband. They're in counseling now, actually working on things." "And you think my public humiliation of Shannon caused that?" "I think your refusal to be a victim caused that. Jennifer saw what happened to Shannon, how she lost everything and gained nothing, and realized she was headed down the same path. I'd never thought about it that way. The idea that Shannon's destruction might have saved other marriages was both comforting and disturbing." "What about the ones who didn't confess?" I asked. Miranda's expression grew serious. "Brett Johnson left his wife 2 months after the reunion. Moved to California with some woman he'd been seeing on business trips. Turns out he'd already been planning it, but seeing Shannon get exposed scared him. He figured it was better to leave on his own terms than risk getting caught. So my actions had both saved marriages and destroyed them. I wasn't sure how to feel about that moral complexity." "Do you regret it?" Miranda asked. "What you did that night?" I considered her question while pretending to examine bananas I had no intention of buying. "I regret that it had to happen at all," I said finally. "I regret that Shannon made choices that forced my hand. But do I regret exposing the truth? No. I don't regret that." Miranda nodded like she understood. "For what it's worth, most of us think you handled an impossible situation with more grace than Shannon deserved." That conversation stayed with me for days. The idea that my actions had ripple effects beyond my own destroyed marriage, that other families had been impacted by that night in ways I'd never considered. It made me think about the nature of truth and consequences, about whether we have responsibilities to expose lies even when doing so causes pain. Last week, Kyle came home from school with a black eye and scraped knuckles. "What happened?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Tommy Peterson said some stuff about Mom. About the reunion. Said she was it. Well, he used words I'm not supposed to repeat." My stomach sank. I'd hoped the kids would be shielded from the worst of the gossip, But in a town like Cedar Falls, secrets have a way of traveling through generations. What did you do? I hit him. Kyle's jaw was set in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of myself. He can say whatever he wants about me, but he doesn't get to talk about Mom like that. I should have been upset about the fighting. Should have lectured him about violence not being the answer. Instead, I felt a surge of pride that my son would defend his mother despite everything she'd done. Kyle, I need you to understand something. What your mother did was wrong, and it hurt our family in ways that can't be fixed. But she's still your mother, and you're allowed to love her and defend her. Are you mad that I fought for her? No, buddy. I'm proud of you for standing up for someone you care about, even when the situation is complicated. That night, I called Shannon and told her what had happened. Oh God, she whispered. Derek, I'm so sorry. The kids shouldn't have to deal with this because of what I did. No, they shouldn't. But they do because actions have consequences that reach far beyond the people who make them. What can I do? Nothing. Just be the best mother you can be from now on. They need to know that even though you made terrible choices, you still love them enough to do better. There was a long pause. Derek. Yeah. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me? I'd been dreading this question for 2 years, mostly because I didn't know the answer myself. Shannon, I can forgive you for the affair. People make mistakes, get caught up in feelings, make bad decisions. I can even forgive you for lying to me for months. But I don't know if I can forgive you for being so ready to discard me. For planning your new life while pretending to love our old one. For talking about me like I was just an obstacle to overcome. She started crying, I could hear it over the phone. I never meant to hurt you that badly, Derek. I felt trapped in a life I'd never really chosen. When Terrence came back, it felt like a chance to reclaim something I'd given up. I understand that, Shannon. I really do. But understanding and forgiving are different things. Will you ever stop hating me? I don't hate you, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I'm angry at you, disappointed in you, hurt by you. But I don't hate you. Hate takes too much energy and I need all my energy for Kyle and Chloe. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd first seen her excitement about reconnecting with Terrence, and tried to figure out what I actually felt about my ex-wife. The white-hot rage was gone. The devastating betrayal had settled into a dull ache that I'd learned to live with. What remained was a kind of sad acceptance that sometimes people you love are capable of hurting you in ways you never imagined possible. Shannon wasn't a monster. She was a woman who'd gotten caught up in a fantasy and made choices that destroyed everything real in her life. She'd lost her husband, her children's daily presence, her home, her community, and her self-respect for a man who'd vanished the moment things got complicated. In some ways, she'd paid a higher price for her betrayal than I had for being betrayed. That doesn't make what she did acceptable, but it does make her human. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of the reunion. I marked it by taking Kyle and Chloe to the movies, just a normal Saturday afternoon with my kids, living the life we'd built from the wreckage of the old one. On the way home, Chloe asked, Daddy, do you think you'll ever get married again? It's a question I've been asking myself lately. I'm 39 years old. I have a lot of life left to live. Kyle and Chloe deserve to see that love doesn't always end in betrayal, that commitment can mean something. Maybe someday, sweetheart. But not until I find someone who understands that families are precious things that should be protected, not thrown away. What if you find someone like that but Kyle and I don't like her? I laughed. Then I guess I'd have to find someone else because you two are the most important people in my world. As we pulled into our driveway, the same house Shannon and I had bought together 12 years ago and now just mine and the kids, I realized something had shifted. For 2 years, I'd been defined by what had been done to me. The betrayed husband. The man who'd exposed his wife's affair in spectacular fashion. The victim who'd refused to go quietly. But sitting there with my children, planning what to make for dinner and which movie we'd watch before bed, I understood that I was no longer that man. I was Derek Morrison, single father of 2 amazing kids. Derek Morrison, who'd survived the worst thing that had ever happened to him and built something new from the ashes. Derek Morrison, who'd learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. The reunion happened. Shannon cheated. I exposed her. Our marriage ended. Those are the facts and they'll always be part of our family's history. But they don't have to be the end of our story. Kyle starts middle school next year. Chloe wants to try out for the school play. I've been thinking about taking some night classes, maybe learning a skill that would let me open my own repair shop instead of working for Morrison Auto. These are the things that matter now. Not the past that can't be changed, but the future that's still being written. Shannon will always be part of that future because she's the mother of my children. But she'll never again be the center of my world, the person whose happiness matters more than my own. That night at the reunion I thought I was destroying her. What I was really doing was freeing both of us. Her from a marriage she didn't want, me from a marriage that was built on lies. It was brutal and messy in public, and I'm sure there were better ways to handle it. But it was honest. And after months of living with deception, honesty felt like the only thing that mattered. Sometimes people ask me if I would do it differently, knowing what I know now. Would I confront Shannon privately instead of exposing her publicly? Would I try to work things out instead of immediately filing for divorce? The answer is no. Not because I'm vindictive or unforgiving, but because some betrayals are so complete that they require complete responses. Shannon didn't just cheat on me. She rewrote our entire relationship, turning 12 years of what I thought was genuine love into what she described as settling. She planned to abandon our family while pretending to be committed to it. She spoke about me with contempt to the man she was cheating with. That wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a systematic deception that revealed who she really was underneath the woman I'd thought I'd married. The public exposure wasn't revenge, it was truth-telling. It was making sure that everyone understood the real story of what had destroyed our marriage, not the sanitized version Shannon would have preferred. And if that truth-telling saved other marriages or destroyed others, if it made people have uncomfortable conversations or forced them to confront their own deceptions, then maybe that was necessary too. We live in a world where people are encouraged to quietly swallow betrayals, to take the high road, even when others have taken the lowest possible road. We're told that exposing lies makes us just as bad as the people who told them. I reject that philosophy. Some lies deserve to be exposed. Some betrayals deserve to have consequences. Some people deserve to face the full weight of what they've done, publicly and completely. That reunion was Shannon's worst nightmare, being revealed as the person she really was instead of the person she pretended to be. But it was also my liberation. The moment I stopped being a victim and started being someone who refused to accept unacceptable treatment. 2 years later, I can say with confidence that it was worth it. Every ugly moment, every difficult conversation, every night the kids cried because their family was broken, it was all worth it to be living an honest life instead of a false one. Shannon lost everything that night. Her marriage, her reputation, her fantasy of a perfect new life with Terrence. But I found something I'd never had before, the knowledge that I'm strong enough to survive the worst thing that can happen to a marriage, and that I'm worth fighting for, even if I have to do the fighting myself. And that, in the end, makes me the winner of this story, not because I destroyed Shannon but because I refused to be destroyed by her. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.